Hello and a good morning, good afternoon and a very good evening to you, the good and wonderful people of the tube. Hope you're well today, hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. You're a bit crooked there, people tube. 1 second. Oh, I've made it worse. There we go. Now you are level. That's like a spirit level. Okay, so anyway, yes, welcome to another video, people tube. Welcome to another Gig Stories with Dave. Somebody said in the last video in a comment that I should have like a big armchair, and I agree. Big armchair, pipe, maybe a cup of brandy, I don't know, big fire roaring next to me. Anyway, regardless of all that today, we are in the downstairs guitar room, we're in the Caravaggio room today, acoustic room, which is nice for a change. Okay, so yeah, today's gig story, people tube. So, I'm going to combine both times we played this place. The first time we played it, it was kind of uneventful. Something happened afterwards, but the second time we played there, things got a bit interesting, to say the least. So, again, I'm not going to name where the venue is. I know where this one is, but I don't want to name names or anything like that. But anyway, this pub we were playing at was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, literally middle of nowhere in this tiny little town. Basically, like if you were driving through this town, say you were driving towards this town and you did this, you'd be out the other end of it. You'd miss it. So we were playing in this little town at this pub, and it was very dingy. It was down one of the back streets of this little village, and the first time we went there, I was a bit like, what? And the pub was weird. It was really odd. I've never known a pub like it, to be honest with you. It was just long. So where you walked in the door, the toilets were on the left, so we weren't set up near the toilets, which was always a bonus when you're playing a pub. The toilets were immediately on the left as you walked in, and basically you walked straight up, and basically it just went all the way up. It was like this massive long corridor, and it was probably about, I don't know, 6-7 meters across, and that was your lot. It was really odd. And again, like, what you had was kind of like, you walked in like that, and then like you walked a bit further, and then the bar was here, and then there was a beer garden outside on this side, and then just a little bit further back from that is where we played, right at the top, and there was a fireplace right at the top that we set up in front of, oldie worldy fireplace, and that was basically the band area, if you will. So anyway, when we first played there, the lineup I had at the time was obviously me. My friend Kyle was on drums, and my friend Carl was playing bass. So we were loading our stuff in. I was a bit like, I don't know about this one. Anyway, we were loading stuff in, and there was this one guy who kept badgering Carl, the bass player, saying, "Do you play Metallica?" And we were like, he was like, "I can play Metallica." Bearing in mind, Carl ain't even got his amp in yet. Yeah, no, there was no amp in yet. Nothing was set up. We were just getting to it. This guy was like, "Do you play Metallica? Do you play Metallica?" Blah, blah, blah. And Carl was like, "Yeah, we can play some Metallica for you." Because we could. We could do Enter Sandman, or we could do, For Whom the Bell Tolls, or whatever. We tended to jam Enter Sandman quite a lot in the trio. It's good. It's just fun. It's just a giggle. And people know it, and you got to throw people at pub gigs something they know, you have to do that. And in all fairness, but at this point in time, we weren't doing any originals anyway. I don't believe. Maybe doing the one or the other. I don't feel like we were doing many originals at this point. Or were we? No, we were. I do apologise. Actually, it was the second time we went back where we weren't doing originals. This first time we were doing a fair few originals. But we did, we mixed it up with covers from Jimi Hendrix. We had Deep Purple. We had a lot of classic rock stuff in there as well as our own stuff. So this guy was badgering, "Play Metallica," blah, blah, blah. And he started heckling, "Play Metallica!" But I ain't got my amp in yet, let alone Carl getting his amp in, and the drums weren't set up, and he just wouldn't stop, and it was just like, oh dear, this is going well. So anyway. And he went after Carl. I don't know why. He left me alone, and he left Kyle alone. I don't know why, but he went after Carl constantly. He was just badgering him. "Play Metallica, play Metallica, blah, 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 blah." Anyway, eventually, we had our stuff set up to a point where we could actually probably play, and we was like, "Oh, fine, whatever." And I think we ended up playing well, we were going to play For Whom the Bell Tolls, just the intro bit, just to appease this fella who wouldn't shut the hell up. He wouldn't leave us alone. Well, he wouldn't leave Carl alone, and he just wouldn't shut up. And it was very... It was off-putting, and you could see it was annoying other people, because he was just being really rowdy. I mean, there wasn't many people in the pub, to be honest with you. There was probably about 10 people in there, at max. That probably includes us and the bar staff. But it was just annoying, and you could see people at the side of the bar just like, oh God, shut him up. So we thought we'd just do a bit of Whom the Bell Tolls for him, and then just kind of like, appease him. So, got the guitar on, Carl got his bass on, Carl got behind the drums, and literally, before we'd even finished the counting, this guy looked at us and walked out the pub. So we were left doing Whom the Bell Tolls to no one who wanted to hear it. And it was just like, oh great, that's just bad, isn't it? And he literally... I swear he had that planned. He was like, as soon as they start playing, I'm going to walk out. And literally, he was out of the building like a shot. Before the counting was done, he was out the bloody door. And it was just like, I remember looking over at Carl, and Carl was just like, because Carl had been really wound up by this guy, and I can understand why. He was proper bad. Carl was doing his best to set all his gear up for the gig, and all he was getting was this guy badgering him constantly. And, another thing as well, bless him, Carl was set up on the left side of us. So I was set up on the right side. There was a wall here. Obviously, Carl in the middle, Carl over there. And to get to the beer garden, you had to walk out past Carl. So Carl, every time somebody wanted to go to the beer garden, which was a lot, he had to just move out the way and then move back and then move out the way and move back. Because basically there wasn't enough space. It was a nightmare. So that was fun. That was great. Anyway, we played, and for some reason they wanted us back, even though there was literally nobody in the pub. You do the maths on that one, people of the tube. For some reason they wanted us back. Anyway, at that point in time, I was carrying a overkill PA desk. I was using a 1,000-watt Allen & Heath 500 aside PA desk, which I didn't need. And I was using one fader, because we never mic'd up, because the pubs we were playing were too small. You don't mic up, there's no point. And so we just had one mic, so it was proper overkill. But anyway, it's all I had at the time, though. I didn't have anything smaller, and my brain just didn't comprehend the idea of going smaller on PA for some reason at that point in time. Anyway, I had, when we had loaded stuff in, this Allen & Heath desk was in this huge flight case, and I had put it on top of this absolutely battered up. All the tables in this pub were battered, basically. They're all knackered, like pub tables are. There was like cut marks, chip marks. It was dirty. It was sticky. So I got this small table which they had given to us to use for PA desks and stuff on, and I put the desk on top of there, and left it. That was where it stayed, plonked on top. Then at the end of the night, lid back on, out back to the van. We got a phone call about a week or so, not the next day, a week or so, after the gig, from the landlady, saying, "You've ruined one of our tables, you're going to have to pay for it to be repaired," and blah, 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 blah. And she'd rung our manager at the time. We had a manager at the time, guy who was booking his gigs. And I was like, and then he contacted me saying, well, the table I put the desk on was already knacked. It was already scratched to buggery, and it wouldn't have made any difference. You could have took a chainsaw to it, and it would have, it wouldn't have made a dent. You wouldn't have even noticed. It was that trolleyed. And literally, she says, oh, well, we paid you in good faith, and all you've done is ruin this table. This table, people with tube, was probably about this big. We're talking about, nothing. It was tiny. And again, if you've been to the, I'm sure a lot of you have pubs in England, in these these backwater towns in England, the tables are knackered. This one was barely holding itself up as it was. And I remember it just being ruined. I remember the manager ringing me and saying, well, they want us to pay for the damages. And I was like, I'm not paying for damage. I didn't do it. They gave us that table to put stuff on because, in their words, it was something like, that's the table people use for mixing desks. And I'm like, well, what? I thought, how do we know it's not another band? Because there wasn't. We played on the Friday night, and there was another band in on the Saturday night. I was like, how do they know it's not the other band who's done it, not us? Because I don't remember for 1 minute scratching this table up at all. I really don't. And again, like I say, even if I did, you wouldn't notice if you looked at it because you wouldn't have any idea. It was already Troyed. Anyway, they wanted us to pay something like in the region of like, I think it was like 60, 70 odd quid to get this table repaired. Which to me is just like, really? Why don't you just buy a new table? You know, and they had plenty of tables, people achieve. Let's put it that way. You know, they weren't going to miss this tiny little diddy table. Anyway, I was like, I'm not paying. And the manager was like, well, you got to. And I was like, well, I don't have to because we didn't do anything. I know I didn't scratch up their table. And I was a bit like, you know, I know I didn't do that. I wouldn't have done that. I'm very respectful. I'm going to in there go, trashing my gear around the place. I don't do that to my gear, let alone other people's stuff. You know, I'm not about to do that. And the thing is, the desk was so heavy that once it's down, it wouldn't move anyway. You know, and it was in a flight case, and there's no way this could have been. And again, even if we did scratch a table, which we didn't, you wouldn't have even known. Anyway, we eventually had to pay 60, 70 odd quid to get this bloody table repaired. And I think it was a fast one, personally, because this brings me quite neatly, actually. When we went back, this is the last time we played there, we went back again, people of Tube. I think about a year or so later. It would have been a year later, actually. We went back. And, or was it the same year? I'm pretty sure it was a year later. I don't actually remember offhand. But we went back there and I couldn't find that table. There wasn't any small tables like that anymore in this place. And I think they just pocketed the money. But I think maybe they thought, oh, we've overpaid them, let's do something to get money back. Or they did get the table redone and it just disappeared. I don't know. I think it was a fast one, personally. Anyway, regardless of that, this brings me to... So, that first time we played was kind of frustrating more than anything. You know, there was no one there. It was a bit of a stupid place to book us into. You know, you could tell that, like, you know, you could have had any band in there that night. You could have had Van Halen in there, or the Chili Peppers, or, you know, Jimi Hendrix, and no one would have given a monkey's bum. They really wouldn't. They wouldn't have cared. Anyway, so that first time was frustrating. Anyway, we were booked back again. I don't know why they booked us back, but they did. And we were booked back in there again to play. And this time the lineup was slightly different. Carl had left the band by this time, and my brother was back playing bass. My brother's like the original bass player of a trio when I started in 2007. I nearly said 2007. I was like, what year's that, Dave? Anyway, so that's some kind of weird sci-fi thing. So, yeah, about a year later we went back, and it must have been kind of winter time, because I remember it was dark by the time we got there, and it was only about, like, you know, 5-ish, 6-ish we got there. And I was just a bit like, you know, here we go again. So Kyle was on drums, brother was on bass, I was on guitar and vocals again, and we turned up and started loading things in again. My brother commented on how weird the venue was, again, the layout of it, because it was weird. It was very strange. It's like this long pub with a beer garden. The beer garden was actually bigger than the inside of a pub, which is why a lot of people spent a lot of their time out there, I think. Anyway, not much happened, to be honest with you. It was very uneventful until the end of the first set. So towards the end of the first set, we were playing away to no one, as usual. Not even the best. It's debilitating. It's very debilitating doing this, the toilet circuit. I'll tell you that, people of YouTube. It really is. Anyway, playing away to no one, just playing for ourselves. You know, it's paid rehearsal. And playing away. And these two women walk in. From, you know, you can see them walk in. They walked in. Anyway, one of them, she was very, very tall. And she walked up to she walked quite close up to the band. And I thought they were just going to go straight out to the beer garden. Again, you have to walk past where my brother was now playing bass to get out. Yeah, you had to walk past him. He had to move his bass up while playing to let people out. It's like a gate. Anyway, it was weird because she stopped to look at the band, and I thought, oh, maybe she's come to check out what we're doing. But she locked onto Kyle, our drummer, just locked onto him, and I saw it, and I was a bit like, that's weird. That is strange. There was just this eye contact, and I looked over at Kyle, and I saw he had locked onto her. So their eyes had met, and it was love. I think, people of the tube, for one night only. As this story progresses, so foreshadowing. So I was a bit like, what's going on here then? Do they know each other? Because they look like they know each other. That's really, really, really strange. I didn't know Kyle knew anybody out here in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, we I think we had maybe 1-2 more songs to do in our first set, and we finished the first set and went to take a break. I think my brother went out front, probably to have a fag or something, and I sat down with Joe, who had come to the gig with me, and we would have sat nattering anyway. Kyle had gone outside where this woman was. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm telling these stories. When I tell them as well, I'm like, yeah, that happened. So anyway, Kyle had gone straight outside. He hadn't come to sit with us like he normally did. He'd just gone straight outside. Anyway, I wanted to go and see where my brother was. He was taking a long time. I remember something like that. He was like, I was like, where is he? So I said to John, I'm going to go and find Johnny. And I stood up from where I was. My amp was say over there, and the beer garden was over there, and there was this big window just over in that direction, but you could see out into the beer garden. And anyway, I got up, stood up, and didn't pay much attention. I'm pretty sure it was when I walked back in. So I went out and found Johnny. He was just outside. I think he was on his phone or doing something. I don't really know. I don't really remember that bit. Anyway, as I walked back in to find out, he was like, yeah, I'll be in a minute. Because we're only on a 15-minute break. We've probably been about 5 minutes at this point in time. As I was walking back in, I happened to glance out into the beer garden, and this is where it went weird. Brace yourself, people of the tube. So, this is me walking, by the way. This is how I walk at a gig, because I'm grooving. Anyway, so I walked back into the pub, and I just happened to look out to the beer garden. This was my mistake. So, outside was lots of wooden chairs. Sat upon one of these wooden chairs was my drummer, just sat there, with this woman straddling him over the top. And they looked like they were basically eating each other's faces at this point in time. It looked like a scene from a zombie movie. They were basically literally. It wasn't very romantic. Let's put it that way, people. It was a bit kind of like, huh? Yeah, to watch on and see it. It's like is that normal? It's like watching I don't even know. What it was like. I watched a dog eating. It was just mental. I was just like, are they actually eating each other's face? Is Kyle going to come back in and he's going to have no face? And has she got no face because Kyle's at hers and she's at his? And I was a bit like, what the hell is going on out there? Anyway, that wasn't all of it. There's another 2 elements here. So the other element was that, bearing in mind this is outside in the beer garden for all to see, Kyle's trousers were undone and a certain body part was exposed and a certain woman was doing an act upon it. Let's put it that way. Just in a beer garden. And there was probably about, 5 or 6 people just watching. happened? So I looked out and I saw that, and I was like, I remember I went over to Joe and I said, Joe, you won't believe what's happening in the beer garden. Definitely want a beer garden that night, I'll tell you that, Pikachu. There was something else going on altogether. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. What the hell is going on? And it was just so odd that like there was people watching. It was outside. It was cold. You know, it was winter. It was freezing cold. I was like, oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? Like, I think I said something like, you won't believe what's going on in a beer garden. You're just going to have to just look out the window. Because I was like, I think I needed clarification in my brain of what I had seen was real. And I remember she went to the window and looked out. I don't think she got too close, but she just kind of poked her head out and was like, oh. And then my brother walked in and he looked out and went, oh. And he was just like, oh my God. I was just like, Jesus. The problem was, time was up. We had to get back on and play, and they're still eating each other's faces and doing things they shouldn't be doing in public. And I was just like, I remember like thinking, am I going to have to go out to the beer garden and interrupt that to get him back in here so we can play? And I was like, I can't do it. Can't do that. So I was like, I'm not doing it. I'll wait. I'm just gonna wait. I think I was very wise on my decision. Part there, Pikachu. What do you reckon? Because I was just like, I can't go in there. I can't in there, out there, and interrupt that. I can't be near that. And it was just like, oh God, I can't. So we sat there and we waited for him to come back in. I don't know how much longer it was. Luckily, no one hounded us to get back on and play. So I was quite happy about that. Because, again, I wasn't about to go out and interrupt the shaking hands with the Governor of Love dance that was going on. And I just didn't want to be anywhere near it. You know, if I could have driven home at that point, I would have done. Because it was just like, you know... No, not in public, not like that. You know, behind closed doors, do what you want, but not in public like that. Especially not when, you know, I don't know, people are watching. It's just freaky. Anyway, it gives me the judders. Anyway, so Kyle eventually came back in with this woman. I seem to remember they were holding hands. I don't remember. It was very fly-by-night. Anyway, they came back in. She walked off. To the toilets, and Kyle came and sat behind his kit with like literally a smile ear to ear. Yeah, he was floating. Yeah, I don't think he walked back in. He probably just floated back in. Very happy fella. So I was like, okay, so I'm guessing we're playing the second set now. So we started playing the second set. So I'm going to divert slightly off here, PeopleTube. At this point in time, I was using... I'm going to talk about equipment for a minute. At this point in time, amp-wise, I was using a Marshall, my Marshall full valve 50 watt plexi head. And this is the gig where the amp decided to go mental. And I don't know why. I'll come back to the weird stuff in a minute, because we're not over yet. We ain't over. There's still a weird thing to come. But I want to mention this as well, as soon as we're a music channel as well. So midway through the second set, probably about 3 songs in, give or take, my Marshall amp decided, and I don't know why, power must have gone weird. It decided to basically just go dull. I want to be a bass amp, it said. I want you to play bass, Dave. So basically all the highs, all the mids, everything just went out of the amp, and literally it was like somebody just covered its mouth, and I was like, what the hell? Because also my guitar disappeared into the ether. You know, it was so low endy that it had no cut, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And frantically, between singing and trying to sort it out, I was turning knobs on the amp, and I eventually had it, so I had the presence all the way up, treble all the way up, again, weird, and middle all the way up to try and get it bright, and it wouldn't go bright. And I was like, what's going on? I was like, where's the guitar tones? And it was just this dull nothing. I remember looking over at Joe at one point, and Joe was just like, what the hell's going on? And I was just like, what's going on? And it had done this a few times before PewDiePie, but this is the worst. It had never done it. And it was just toneless. It sounded awful. And I was losing my mind because it just sounded so bad. Even though we were playing to no one. We were playing to Kyle's friend at the time. She was sat over to the left side of us by now when we were playing, and she was just locking onto him and he was locking onto her, and they were looking at each other like, you know, with that lover's stare. And I was just like, for God's sake, what the hell is going on? And I was getting so angry to the point where I was like, well, what I'm going to after the next song, I'm just going to trade it out for my MG, which was my backup amp at the time. You know, I wasn't using the MG as my main amp. I was using my Plexi as the main amp for about half a year. I think I used that. Well, maybe a bit longer. I don't actually remember. But anyway, I was like, all right, after this song, I'm going to change out. Midway through that song, which I feel was Black Knight by Deep Purple for some reason. I don't know why. I've had this feeling it was Black Knight by Deep Purple. Midway through that song, the amp came back. But presence, treble, and middle were all on full. My God, did it come back with a bark. It came back more vicious than Cerberus. And it was horrid, and I quickly had to I was like, singing can wait, and I went back and I turned all the dials back, and all of a sudden the amp was back and it sounded great again. But literally it probably stayed off for the best part of 4 or 5 songs, so about 20 minutes I had this dull, horrible, sludgy guitar tone that just had no clarity whatsoever, and I was just fighting through it, and I was like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. Anyway, so that was fun. Anyway, the amp came back and it kind of performed okay for the rest of the night. Another thing as well, PewDiePie, is I made sure I took a towel to the gig. What did I take a towel for? Was it because I get sweaty? No, it was so I could put it over a table and then put the PA desk on top of that. So, one sec, PewDiePie. Okay, sorry about that, PewDiePie. We are back. Okay, so let's finish this story up, shall we? So, if it wasn't already weird enough, like I say, our first trip there wasn't great. The second trip there was just odd. We never played there again. I wonder if you can tell why. So anyway, we finished the gig out, no encore. And immediately Kyle disappeared with this woman again, and that was them gone. So drum kit was left to be taken down later on. I just wanted to leave. I just wanted to go home. And couldn't because drum kit was set up. So I packed all my stuff down, and you know Johnny packed his stuff down, and we started lifting our stuff out to 2 vehicles at the time. I didn't have my big green beast van at the time. I only had a little Vauxhall combo, and my brother had his car. So we were basically like, you know, carting stuff out to it. My brother had borrowed my dad's truck to load the stuff in, and so we were took my brother's Ampeg bass rig out, bass pedal board, took my Marshall out, and did all that. Anyway, so it was quite late by this time, probably about 11:30, nearly 12 o'clock-ish time. No sign of Kyle and this woman. They just vanished. They weren't in the beer garden anymore, so they were just gone. And I was like, my brother had given Kyle a lift as well, so my brother couldn't go anywhere until Kyle reappeared, if you will. So we're packing away. Anyway, this is the last. Well, it's not the last cringy part of the night, but this was just not a good part. So I remember I was packing away my pedal board, and at the bar, which was literally there to me, there was this really old fella. He was like doubled over at the bar, and there was this woman, and then there was this young girl. She was probably about 17, I want to say. Anyway, the conversation was beyond inappropriate, and it was making me uncomfortable to the point where I was like, I can't be in this place anymore. And it wasn't the fact of like all 3 of them were responsible for the inappropriate conversation, and I was just a bit like, I can't cope with any more weirdness tonight. It's already been like beyond odd. And this conversation was just disgusting. It was of a sexual orientation, if you will, PeterTube, and I was just like, this is not good. This fella was probably in his 80s. The woman was probably in her 40s, and this girl was about 17 years old. And I was just like, this is not right. This should not be spoke about. This stuff should not be spoke about in public. If you want to talk about it at home, fine, but not in earshot of me, Joe, and my brother, and anybody else who happened to be in the pub. Wasn't many people in the pub by this time. And I was just like, Jesus. And I can't repeat what they were talking about, PeterTube, but I remember it very well. And I was just like, this is just wrong. And I was like, Jesus, what is going on? Where am I? Where am I in the Twilight Zone? And it was at a point of night where, and the bloke was just being overly disgusting. To the point where I was like, if I don't leave, I'm going to kill him. Because although the two women were involved in the conversation as well, and they weren't exactly being not unlewd, if you will, he was being more vile than both of them put together. And I was just like, I can't deal with an old man like that talking that way to a girl who's 17 years old. I was probably about 26-ish at the time, 20, maybe a bit older. And I was just like, I can't. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's just, there are things you don't do, and this is one of them. And I was just like, when your stomach starts to churn out of anger. And again, it's not too dissimilar to what happened in the Spalding gig, where I was just like, I'm gonna hit someone, and it's gonna be that guy. And I was just like, right, get hold of yourself, Dave. Calm. Just try and remain calm. Get your stuff in the van. And I remember I walked out to the van, and when I walked back in, this 16-year-old girl was basically on top of this old fella, like near the bar, and they were eating each other's faces. And I was like, is that a thing that goes on here on a regular basis? Is that normal? Anyway, I was just like, slurping noises aside, I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. I need to go. But we couldn't go anywhere because Kyle had vanished, and my brother, I couldn't leave him there on his own. So I was like, you have to suck it up, Dave, and just hold on as best you can, boy. And I was just like, I can't do it. Anyway, those three people, the 17-year-old girl, the old fella, and the other woman, they eventually left all together, all hand in hand. Well, he was in the middle, and it was just arms around both of them, and I was just like, what the hell? And I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm never coming back to this place again in my life. If there's never any other gigs in the world other than this place, I will never gig again. And I was just like appalled. It had gone from really neutral to really funny and unbelievable to really annoying. With the amp and then these people, I was just like, what is going on? The whole gamut of emotions was being chucked at us. And I know I wasn't the only one who felt it as well. I remember Joe felt very uncomfortable. I remember my brother felt really uncomfortable. Because again, we could hear these three people going off. And Kyle had vanished. We had all experienced that. So we were all just kind of like, oh my God. Anyway, we packed all our stuff back in the vans. But we couldn't leave. We couldn't leave. So we had to go back into the pub and sit there and wait. Thankfully, everyone had left. Apart from Kyle and this woman who had just disappeared. Don't know where they were. They'd just gone. And we had to wait for them. Drum kit still set up, bearing in mind. Anyway, we were sat. I remember sat, the bar was here. The wall of the bar was there and the top of the bar was there. And I was kind of sat next to it and Joe was there. And my brother, I think, was across from me. And we were on these kind of stools, if you will. Pew kind of, pub pew kind of things. Anyway, Kyle and this woman reappeared. By this time, I'm basically steaming. There's steam coming out my ears. Because I'm just we've been sat, I think we've been waiting for an hour to leave. And we couldn't go anywhere. And we were just sat there, just literally talking, but twiddling our fingers, waiting for Kyle to finish his business, basically. Anyway, me not being in a very good mood was not in a very talkative space. So I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth shut, which is the best thing I could have done at that point in time. If I had said something, it would have been inappropriate, and I knew that because I was in such a bad mood. So I kept my mouth shut. Anyway, Carl came back in with his woman. He started packing with this woman, and he started packing his drum kit down. And she came over to talk to us, and she was like basically saying, "Me and my brother are rubbish, and he's the star of the show." Basically saying well, because we'd done Jimi Hendrix, it's like, well, your bass playing was okay, but it wasn't as good as his drumming, and your guitar playing, I mean, it's not very good. And if you want to learn how to play Jimi Hendrix, she actually said this. She goes, if you want to learn how to play Jimi Hendrix properly, you need to look up this other band, this local guy. He knows how to play Jimi Hendrix properly. And I was just like, do you know a bit in Inspector Clouseau's The Commissioner when he gets the eye. I used to have a perfectly good eye. That was what was going on with me. I was just kind of like, she's now giving me critique about my guitar playing. Like, I don't get it. And basically saying the drummer was basically the only star of the show. Like, what I did is rubbish, and what Johnny did was rubbish. And he was the main draw of the band. And I was just like, no, we're a band. The whole thing's the draw. Anyway, I didn't say a word. I remember literally, I would have sewn my mouth shut if I could have at that point in time, because I just was like, don't speak. And she was just waffling on about this guy of how good he is, and if you want to learn how to play Jimi Hendrix songs, he's the guy to watch, and this, that, and the other. And Joe piped up and said, literally, I think the best thing in the world at this point in time. And she said, if he wants to learn to play Jimi Hendrix properly, surely he'll just go and watch Jimi Hendrix. And I was just like, yes, you're very right there. If I want, I would just go, and I have watched countless videos of Jimi Hendrix, and I'm not about to watch some guy who thinks they know how to play out Jimi Hendrix, when I can watch Jimi Hendrix. It's like, what? And anyway, she took a huff with Joe saying that to her. And there wasn't any back and forth, but you could see that it really annoyed this woman. We later found out, actually, that she was his ex-partner. So she used to go out with this guitarist. So and apparently he was amazing. I never looked him up. I don't know if he was. I didn't need to at that point in time. I was like, I was in burn mode. So I was like, I'm just gonna forget this night ever happened. Although I can't. It's kind of seared into my memory. And anyway, she didn't like that. She didn't like the fact that Joe had answered back to her, and the fact that we'd kind of got one up on her massively. If I want to learn to play Jimi Hendrix, I'll just watch Jimi Hendrix. And these things called videos and DVDs exists. And she just left, basically. I think she just walked out of the pub at that point in time and left poor old Kyle just pack his drum kit down. And anyway, I remember leaving and saying, I remember before we left, and we were saying goodbye to Kyle because my brother was taking him back to his house and me and Joe were coming back here. I said, I am never playing this place ever again. And I remember Kyle said, no, I think we should come back. And I was like, yeah, I know why you want to come back. And I was like, no. I said, if you want to come and play, you come and play with a different band. I said, we're never playing this venue ever again. And we left, and that was that. And I seem to remember, and it was quite a distance. It was probably a good maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away from here to get to the venue. I remember driving along the motorways, coming home and whatnot. I just remember being in the van in complete silence because I was so angry, but at the same time I couldn't quite believe what had happened that night. I was just like, "Is that it? Did this happen?" And it did, and it was just like, "Oh my god, I can't believe tonight." It started off so neutral as well, it started off like nothing. It was going to be another pub gig where we played to no one, and then it all went odd. and then it got it was like hysterical cringe, anger, vile, scary, frustration. I think so many emotions were going on that night, and it was just like, what is going on? Is this? And I remember just like thinking, is this normal? Is this normal? I asked myself about a lot. A lot of these stories people do, but I'll tell you, I asked myself that a lot. Is this normal? Because I didn't know. I still don't. But yeah, so anyway, that's this week's gig story. I say I'll do another one for next month as well. I've got a fair few more. But that was the weird. It was just odd. I had no idea what was going on that night. It was just bizarre. From that break after our first set onwards was just surreal. It was like my amp wanted to leave as well. It was like, oh, I don't even want to be here, you know. Which is why it went all dodge. I was just like, I can't believe what is actually happening. It was just surreal. Anyway, PeopleTube, I hope you enjoyed this gig story. It's been a bit of a weird one. I hope it's been somewhat entertaining though, because it is fun for me now to go back in time and relive them. At the time, it wasn't fun at all. It was not fun at all. It was horrible or uncomfortable. But I think it's important to tell these stories because it really shows what kind of like the toilet circuit, the pub circuit is like to gig, you know, and it's not fun most of the time. You know, it's hard work to do these gigs. It really is, especially when you've got certain people talking about inappropriate nonsense over there and your drummer's outside getting friendly. You know, it's like, what the hell is going on? It's like, you know, we were in Motley Crue or something. But it's weird gig. And yeah, true to my word, we never went back. And I'm very happy about that. Still remember the name of the pub and exactly where it was, but again, I don't want to name places. Well, I can name the place of the village, I think, because there was quite a lot of pubs in this village, and the village was called Crowle. It was Crowle, and there's quite a few of them actually. Though there's quite a lot of Crowles in the UK. I don't know if that's even how to say it, but it was literally there, and I was just like, oh my god, this is just bizarre, and I'm never coming back here again. And it was just nightmarish. Anyway. Well, actually, I'll tell you what, PeopleTube, actually, I'll add a little bit of a bonus at the end of this one. So, to tie in something here, because this isn't really a gig, it is a gig story, but it's kind of a small one, so I'll tag it on at the end of it, because it kind of related. So anyway, I think that was the last year Kyle played with us. I actually fired him. Later that year, that was 2011, and the first year we played there was 2010, and then we played there 2011 when it all went weird, and then I fired Kyle in 2011 and got Jonjo in at the beginning of 2012. Anyway, in 2012 we played this bike fest at a place called Caborn Parva. Great venue. And this isn't really a bad gig story, to be honest with you, but it's a good one. Anyway, but it's an interesting one, to say the least. We were booked to play it, and it was in this kind of converted barn. Anyway, we were booked to play, and we found out that the guy who that woman was talking about in the pub, oh, if you want to learn how to play Jimi Hendrix, you need to watch this fella. He was playing this gig, and he was on after us. Didn't get to see him play, and the reason being was we went on and we did our set with John Joe was now on drums, my brother was playing bass, and we went on and did our set, and I think there is a bit of footage from this gig. I don't actually know, probably on YouTube somewhere. And basically we didn't know, but we basically did their entire set, and we didn't know. You know, we were doing like Don't Believe a Word by Thin Lizzy, Voodoo Child, Black Knight, Deep Purple, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, we had done their set. Well, not all their set, but we had done quite a few of their kind of like well-known songs that they did without knowing, because they were in our set. You know, they were kind of like the bog standard classic rock songs that pub bands play. So we didn't realise that we had played some of their songs, well, predominantly half their set before they had played. And so we finished our set. Went down really well. Went down a storm. People loved it. Great, great crowd reaction. It was just brilliant. We were all on cloud nine. It was amazing. And it was one of the first gigs with John Joe. Anyway, I remember, like, I can't remember actually for the life of me. It was John Joe or my brother. I'd overheard somebody say some of their fans weren't happy with us because we had played their set, and apparently I'd upset the guitarist. I'd upset him, and he was really angry at me and the band in general. And I can't remember who it was. I seem to think it was John Joe, but I don't actually remember if it was him or if it was my brother. If John Joe, if you're watching, please comment below and let us know. I don't remember. But Johnny or John Joe had gone to the toilet and they'd heard plans to basically beat us up. So we left rapidly. So we didn't get to see them play. But basically we snuck out through this back door and we just left. We just ran. We basically ran because we're not getting it was full of bikers who were 10 times bigger than us, and we're not about to mess around with those kind of people. So we just left because we'd upset this band, and they were a big kind of on the biker circuit. These guys were quite big, and so I was like, well, we didn't mean to upset anybody. That was just our set. We just played our set. We didn't know. I can imagine a lot of those songs were played multiple times over that weekend, but so there was a bit of a plan forming. And I think John Joe or Johnny came out and said, we got to get out of here now because they're going to get us if we don't. So, and we left. And that was that. Anyway, but it's such a weird tie-in because, like I say, the guitarist in that band was the guy that woman was talking about a year previous. Absolutely bizarre. Anyway, that's this one anyway picture. So I hope you enjoyed this vid picture. I hope it's been entertaining. I hope it's been a bit of a giggle. It's certainly been fun kind of reliving it for what it is. I still get angry at that conversation that was happening at the bar. Everything else was just surreal. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, YouTube. I hope it's been somewhat kind of entertaining. And I'll see you again for another video very, very soon. Experiment time on Wednesday, YouTube. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. And I wasn't going to do it on camera, actually. I was going to do it in my own time. But I thought I'd actually film it because I'm curious. But we'll talk about that on Wednesday. So until then, have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, YouTube. If you like the channel, like the videos I do, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Link to that description box below. Never gets comfy advertising that at all. I feel horrible every time I have to advertise that. But like I say, it is literally the only thing keeping this channel going at this point in time. So if you're a patron on Patreon, legend. Thank you so much indeed. Your support is literally everything. So thank you. There's also links in the description box as well to my music as well. So other than that, YouTube, hope you enjoyed this vid. I'll see you again. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, and goodbye now. What a weird gig.